Welcome to our first ConstrucTED event presented by Applied Software and DADO. We are excited that you guys could join us today. I'm Todd Wyant, Director of Creative Marketing at Applied Software and host of the Bridging the Gap podcast, all about construction innovation. And we are really excited to hear from our amazing speaker lineup as they share their perspective on the industry, innovation, and adopting a growth mindset, plus a whole lot more. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Emily, for some more words.
Absolutely. Thanks, Todd. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone, or it could be morning or it could be evening. We have a global registrant list here. So we're so excited to see so much interest from all around the country and all around the globe, actually, for this ConstrucTED event. So my name is Emily Heppard. I am the Strategic Development Manager at DADO. We are a construction technology company focused on construction intelligence search. And we are really excited to be co-sponsoring this event with Applied Software. We are going to give you an overview of the event flow today and just the agenda of how our speakers are going to be presented, and then we're going to move into some breakouts. So Todd, do you want to give everybody a quick overview of how the event is going to flow here, and then we can go ahead and get started and kick off our speaker list?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are drawing inspiration from TED Talks today. So we have 5 speakers lined up. Each speaker will have 5 minutes to do their opening TED Talk style. After that, after we hear from all 5 speakers, we are going to open up breakout rooms, which all of you guys have declared which ones you want to be in. Quick caveat, we tried our best to accommodate everybody's first selection as space permitted. Some of you may be in a slightly different room than your first choice. We hope that that's okay. Let us know if you have strong feelings otherwise, and we will do our best to accommodate you. So we'll open up the breakout rooms after each speaker. You'll have 20 minutes in the breakout rooms, and then we will come back all together again at the end for a quick recap and hear what went on in those different breakout rooms, what were the highlights and things that stood out to everybody. While you're in those breakout rooms, please feel free to turn on your video, make this as interactive as possible. All the breakouts are designed for you to get the most out of this event as possible. With that, Emily, any other info before we dive in?
I think you covered it. So let's go ahead, and Todd, would you like to introduce our first speaker?
Absolutely. So our first person at bat here, she gets the lucky opportunity of being setting the bar, is Lauren Lake. She's going to be starting us off. She holds a degree in civil structural engineering from Western University. She's well-versed in construction workflow methods, holds various awards, including receiving the top prize at Google Demo Day, being named in Tech Week 100 list of entrepreneurs, being named to the Forbes Manufacturing and Industry 30 Under 30, and being named the Best of Canada Forbes Under 30 Innovators list. She's the CCO of Bridget. Lauren, welcome.
Sorry, there we go. Technical difficulty for a second. Can everyone hear me okay? Perfect. Okay, let me just present here. Can you see the screen there? Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me. My name is Lauren, and I'm very excited to be kicking off this event with everyone today. So today I'm going to talk about choosing to challenge the status quo, and I'm going to share my story starting our company, Bridget, and just tell you a little bit about the founding story and how the company came to be. So Bridget is a construction technology company, was started back in 2013 by me and my business partner, Mallory. We both had family ties and roots in the construction industry. And so that was really where we got our start. And the initial phase of starting our company, we had this gut feeling that there was an opportunity to bring more technology to the construction industry, but we didn't really know exactly what. And so we started by crane hunting, literally driving around, looking for cranes and just looking for people to talk to. We wanted to ask questions. We wanted to understand what the pain points were. So these were some of our early crane hunting visits. And it led us to this problem, which was around punch list management. We saw that most sites at the time were doing this very manually with Excel spreadsheets. And so our initial idea was, could we build an app that automated a lot of this and just created a really seamless punch list or QA/QC type process through an app? So the first hurdle that we faced, I'm going to talk a lot about the hurdles that kind of defined our business. The first one was, you can't start a tech company because you don't have a software background. And that was true. We didn't have software backgrounds. Neither of us knew anything about programming or technology. And so we were kind of the crazy people going out and starting this tech business with no technical background. This was really frustrating because we felt like we were really onto something, but we couldn't actually execute and build the product. So what we ended up doing was we just sort of hacked it together early on. We created our own wireframes. These were handmade. We would print these off, drive around again back to these construction sites and just show them to people and get feedback and say, do you think this would work? Do you think we should design this differently? And pretty much we were just trying to validate every single thing that we were thinking about with actual potential users before investing the money to go and actually start building the product. And we did that by hiring a summer student. And in the course of the first 4 months with one summer student, I don't know how, but somehow we launched the first version of our punch list product. So this was really exciting. We ended up launching this product. And for 5 years, we bootstrapped the business. We worked out of a basement apartment. That was me doing sales calls from the little laundry room area. That was where we did our phone calling. We just really strove to hit 20% growth every single month, just trying to grow the business bit by bit. So we ended up growing that company to several $1 million in revenue. We had hundreds of customers, but it was a very slow going process, just trying to build the business kind of bit by bit from this basement apartment. The next hurdle that we faced was that all of a sudden we started to see competitors. We were no longer the only company building punch list apps. And these companies that were starting to do more in this space were much, much bigger than us. So you can't compete with the larger companies who are now offering a similar solution. And so this was a tough time for us, but we realized that we needed to stay innovative. We needed to go back to the drawing board and we needed to differentiate ourselves. So we began the research again. We went back out and started talking to people. And this time we uncovered a new problem for a new product that we wanted to launch. And that was for workforce planning. So we saw that a lot of general contractors were doing this again in Excel spreadsheets. And that led us to launch our new product, Bridget Bench, in 2019. Now, the final challenge I will talk to you about is you can't pivot away from something that is working. So we had spent 5+ years building our initial punch list product. And all of a sudden we were thinking about leaving that product behind in kind of search of this new product. And that was a bit of a leap of faith that we decided to make. We knew that the initial opportunity was not what we thought it was early on. And we knew that the market was evolving and we needed to act quickly. So we ended up very quickly pivoting the entire business, which was around 50 people at that time, over to this new product. And it was definitely a leap of faith, but it was something we felt like we had to do in order to stay current. So Bridget today, the bet paid off. We are close to 80 employees now. Our two big competitors on our first product, Procore and Autodesk, became partners, and Autodesk became an investor in the new Bridget Bench workforce planning tool. It was very complementary. It is very complementary to the other products on the market. We were able to raise money from venture capitalists and made the top growing company list 2 years in a row since launching that product. So all of this to say that all of these challenges along the way, and there are many more that we can get into in the Q&A, I think has really embodied this feeling of disruption and just always striving to be unconventional and doing things our own way. So Bridget has always kind of been a little bit different, I think, as a company. And I think that's helped us stay innovative and make sure that we're always solving problems and doing something new for the industry. The other thing I will say is that I think these barriers, while they've been challenging, and I'm sure in all of your careers, you face lots of barriers as well. The thing I always tell myself is that I think when people say you can't do something, it just makes you want to prove that person wrong. And so I think we've always taken a bit of that approach where people are always saying, you can't do this, you can't do that. And we just say, okay, well, let's go and prove it. And so I think that's kind of been the spirit of Bridget as we built our company, just always trying to go out there and create change. And that is all. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lauren. That was great. I love the grit and the tenacity there. Very cool. So our next up is Peyton Kringley. He is a business analyst where he leads his company, LS Black Constructors in Technology. He has had a variety of experiences in his career so far, including developing knowledge in project engineering, the construction supply chain, business analysis, marketing, and information technology. So welcome, Peyton.
Thanks for having me. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation. I apologize. I'm going to try to abstract this as best as possible. I'm here today to kind of discuss a large overreaching question of, AEC technology adoption and kind of not only the systematic product delivery, all of the issues that are underlying the foundation of construction, but kind of the individual attitudes within the industry and your companies. There's a lot of resistance, and we've all felt that from the individual level. So as I kind of explored this question and tried to kind of broaden my understanding of both two very technical industries, technology and construction, I tried to kind of understand where the skills gap was. And as I was reading, I found a University of Minnesota psychologist's paper study of a factor analysis on technology profile index. And this index was statistically derived, and it clustered questions. It just gave it out to the general public, and it asked, what are all the barriers of your attitude towards technology? And the three factors in which I'll be discussing and kind of breaking apart to kind of create practical and, actual solutions for your organizations and for the industry were confidence, interest, and approval. Those three factors are all in kind of their own buckets and kind of obviously all generally correlated in technology. To start with, confidence is kind of more of the absence of anxiety. So a lot of older populations, maybe that weren't born within the skill sets of technology, might be to some level, to be some level not as, I want to say, used to the technology. So what we try to do is we try to create these guided learning paths, very narrow and procedural, for our employees to then understand and have a very high success rate. This success rate then allows people to kind of understand and kind of document where they're going and getting their feet wet. And as we move to the next factor, I think primarily we need to create that skills gap and kind of close that. And with guided training and potentially something like reverse mentoring, you can kind of crisscross over the technical skills gap. And that's proved to be very useful. Moving into the interest is kind of the breadth of understanding and the curiosity in how the system works. I like to think of confidence as very narrow and kind of the vertical skill adoption within your individuals. And interest is kind of the experimentation in the test environments, kind of understanding where the systems kind of break and not. So as you get people more comfortable in the narrow specific utility of their program, you can broaden their use within the holistic version of your company. And I think this proves to be useful too within an industry. You kind of understand where specific programs match and fit, and then you can kind of understand the strategy. I think, from my experience creating test environments, creating test companies, letting people get really immersed in this stuff helps. Another, thing that you can implement in your organization is a tech committee. These tech committees kind of break down the silos within your organization and departments, and the divisions will then kind of become more of a handoff of exchange and knowing where all these systems fit. Finally is approval. And approval, from my perspective, is more about a yes or a no and kind of buying into the process. So depending on whether your leaders typically want to know the technical aspects or are interested in kind of where it fits holistically, I typically try to put my sales cap on and try to sell what I was just sold to them, and try to show them a cost benefit analysis. Where do they save money? Where do they save time, et cetera? And that comes down to good proposals and communication. So as we continue to have this discussion, I'm excited to talk about these three factors, and knowing that the technology and construction industry merger is all sorts of confounding, issues. But I think that handling this from an individual level that you can practically and pragmatically use within your organization is going to be where we start and continue moving the industry forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Peyton. I love that focus on the individual and not drawing generalizations and really focusing in on the person. So I'm excited to hear what comes out of your breakout from that discussion. But next we have, I'm really excited to introduce Danielle O'Connell. Danielle serves as director for the emerging technology team at Skanska USA Building, which is a leading construction firm here in the US. She focuses on the integration of new technologies into design and construction processes, planning and implementing BIM throughout the project lifecycle, applying reality capture tools, and delivering BIM for FM deliverables. Partnering with clients, Danielle also provides consulting for BIM standards, deliverable quality control, and training for technology applications. So Danielle, go ahead and kick us off.
Thanks, Emily. I'm excited to be here. Well, the last year has certainly been challenging for all organizations and people. And you can hear a siren going by probably in the background, of course, as I start. I'm going to talk you through how we've adapted at Skanska, really by accelerating the adoption of technology to keep our projects running and our people safe and healthy, first and foremost. This rapid adoption of technology is what will keep us and the entire industry moving forward into the new normal that we're calling it, and really beyond. So to dive a little deeper, I'm going to break this out into three horizons. The first being pre-COVID. What were we doing before the pandemic? The next, during COVID, how we quickly adapted to crisis. And then we'll look at post-COVID. What does restart look like as we get back to the office? What's our new reality and future state of our business that brings both challenge and opportunity? So pre-COVID, as anyone in the industry knows, construction is notorious for being slow to adopt technology. We often encounter professionals who've been veterans in the industry for 20 to 30 years. They've been successful in their ways, and to introduce a new tool or workflow to them can be challenging. And before they commit, they want to know what's the ROI, what's in it for them. I have spent most of my career disrupting the industry, seeking ways to be innovative in the way we apply BIM or VDC on projects, or put technology into the hands of our seasoned superintendents or PMs. Some of the most rewarding moments of my career have truly been when I see a super or a PM I'm working with have that aha moment, like they finally understand why my role exists. So while some have found the transition to virtual challenging, I found our team was incredibly busy with work we love to do, which is help our teams and clients solve problems by being innovative and finding new ways to tap into our tech stack. So at Skanska, we were able to be nimble and adapt during this transition because of three core elements that were already in place before the pandemic. And those were structure, technology, and operational excellence. We had the right technology infrastructure in place because we made enterprise investments around cloud-based solutions over the last few years. Tools like Box, WebEx, DocuSign, Procore, StructionSite, the list goes on. They were already being utilized on our project team by our project teams throughout the country. Even our environmental health and safety manual was already web-based, and that made for an easier transition once COVID hit. So during COVID, what happened when we found ourselves in the middle of a global pandemic? As we were faced with crisis, we leveraged technology already in use on our project sites, but in new ways. For example, we used wearable technologies to minimize safety risk, monitor social distancing, establish contact tracing, and new PPE protocols. And this really allowed us to more effectively plan and be selective about who was on site and when. Additionally, we were able to keep our owners, subcontractors, design partners informed through virtual project tours. We leveraged tools like StructionSite or Matterport to create these 360 walkthroughs so they could monitor progress on a weekly basis, or we could even invite visitors to finish spaces virtually when team members were unable to travel. A lot of tech companies saw opportunities to deploy their products on our people. I have seen more technology startups entering this space this year, I think, than in my entire career. And it's been tough to keep up with, quite honestly. To keep everyone informed internally, we launched our technology portal. This provided exposure to our full suite of tools that our company has adopted or piloted, connecting our users with subject matter experts, or in some cases, project teams who have implemented the technology. Another example of this is our best practices site. This was created through our National Operations Leadership Council, and it has evolved into a general best practices site for construction operations, and people continue to submit new content week after week. It's actually mind-blowing how many things are on there. This type of knowledge sharing has not only increased communication between our senior leaders, but has also encouraged more intra-industry collaboration and knowledge sharing. And what I found astonishing is that a lot of our people in project teams are way more innovative than they give themselves credit for. So that was an exciting thing too. By creating a culture of innovation and fortitude, new heroes truly emerged from all corners of our business with ideas and solutions on how to keep business moving forward. A great example of this is an electronic survey that was created to screen for COVID-19 symptoms, both for anyone entering an office or a job site. We've really benefited from the breadth of our company and the combined experience across the country. There's been a tremendous amount of problem solving across the entire business, everything done virtually, proving how important it is to be both nimble and flexible. And then lastly, we leveraged a combination of tech and old school ingenuity. This was a funny one to me. In some cases, we realized that simple tools like remote hand washing stations, which we've had for a long time, or a 6-foot stick was a funny story that I heard, could provide just what we needed to keep people safe. And we didn't have to go apply any fancy tech. And we can't forget that not everyone needs to be a disruptor. Diversity of thought is what truly makes us successful, right? So post-COVID, what are the innovations, best practices, lessons learned that will carry forward into this post-COVID new normal and even beyond? Well, just because we're returning to work doesn't mean we're returning to pre-COVID normal. We have the proper protocols and infrastructure in place to ensure employees' safety if they want to return to the office. That said, this period has proven that virtual work can be done. Now more than ever, we need to remain flexible and accommodating when employees are able to be effective in a virtual setting. Additionally, because of this virtual work environment, we started to think about how our offices look, how they'll change, how we can create more flexible workspaces, incorporate healthy and smart building components moving forward. We also have an opportunity to make an impact on the environment, which is exciting to me. We can start looking at reducing the amount we travel from office to office or job site to job site, and truly reduce our carbon impact by continuing to collaborate virtually with all the members of our project team, no matter where they sit. So to do this, we'll continue to leverage technology for virtual collaboration platforms, no matter how much WebEx or Zoom fatigue we all have, to improve safety by using site sensors, wearables, and cameras to track workers, and then further to leverage artificial intelligence to analyze images and video to identify those safety, productivity, and quality issues we're seeing. And then lastly, to continue collaboration with industry partners by providing this thought leadership as we define how what we are building will change. And as we continue to leverage technology, we're taking a closer look at scaling innovation. So we're looking to create a system for converting experiments to operational protocol that give people room to fail, but also have the tools to scale. How can we keep up the momentum that we saw during COVID and encourage rapid rollout of enterprise solutions that solve a problem? And this will help us to continue to grow our innovative culture, encouraging those new heroes I mentioned earlier to help accelerate problem solving, even when we're not in crisis mode. So I, like most of you, I'm sure, are really looking forward to the next year and to see what it brings and how we'll continue to grow as an organization and as an industry. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Danielle. Really interesting to hear how you guys adapted quickly and to keep all the progress moving forward. That was awesome. Looking forward to some more findings coming out of that breakout for sure. Next up is Greg Santoro of DADO. Greg got his BA in economics at Yale University. And after working in strategy consulting for a couple of years, Greg started his career in the construction industry, working in a technology incubator at Stanley Black & Decker. Then he moved on to co-founding DADO, where he serves now as the head of product. Welcome, Greg.
Thanks, Todd. I first just want to say thanks to all the panelists for sharing their stories today. I know when I first started my career, I really appreciated these types of events, and I definitely still do to this day. So I'm going to use my time to talk about trust, because trust has been the single most impactful asset in my career. It's actually funny hearing your talk, Danielle, because I feel like COVID has an implication towards trust too. So I have two stories to share, a good framing for my whole talk, is that you have to build trust before you need it. The problem is that when you're younger, you don't have like a bank of trust, at least professionally, because you're just starting out. But at least I found like having a bank of trust has been like really critical to both professional and personal life. So how do you build it is the question. So I have two tools that I use today that I'll talk about and some stories to speak to them. The first tool is to communicate often. And so say what you will do and do what you will say. And this builds what I'll call like a pillar of trust, which is people's sense of your character. And the second tool that I use is to act like a mini CEO and be results oriented. And this builds another pillar of trust, trust in your competence. And the reason why I highlight those two is because like character and competence is that, for example, you trust your mom and dad, right? They have your back, but you don't trust them to fly a spaceship because they don't have that skill set. So it's just like that's where the competence piece comes in. So I'm just going to share two stories from my career to highlight how these tools have helped me and hope they can help you as well. So my first story begins when I was 23. I was fresh out of consulting. I was in a new city where I didn't know anyone, and a new job where I didn't know anyone with Stanley Black & Decker. And I was asked to help manage our group's first real pilot customer in another state. And I was honestly feeling pretty nervous about it because it involved me like driving a huge pickup truck to another state with a bunch of hardware that I had no idea how to install. And there was just a lot of potential for things to not go well. And in addition to that, I had to build the respect of 3 different groups. I had the Stanley team, who I was just introduced to. I had this pilot customer who was a general contractor running the job in Pennsylvania. And then I had all the subcontractors on site who I needed their help because they kept the hardware operational when I wasn't there. So there were a lot of people to appease. And this is where I use that first tool I talked about to communicate often. And part of the goal was just to prove that I'd be more of a help than a nuisance, and call that trust, call it credibility. It's what I needed to do. So I would communicate on very small things. For example, I'd communicate when I would be there and when I was planning on leaving. And if I said I was going to finish by 5 p.m., for example, or 3 p.m., I would finish by then. Or if I was off course, I would tell the team, hey, something's changed. And communicating when something is going to go wrong is really helpful, because even if it does go wrong, that builds trust in the process. And it just shows that you communicate with the good and the bad. So in addition to communicating on small things, I had also to remember to continue conversations that I had on longer term items. So at the beginning of the project, I told the super, he was a really important stakeholder for me to work with. And he was definitely pretty rigid in the beginning. And I told him that I was not going to get in his way. And I made sure to like check in with him along the way to make sure I was making good on that promise. And this just really helped me establish a relationship with him. And so I basically created every single opportunity I could to communicate information, because that meant it was an opportunity for me to build that bank of trust. And so over time, as I executed on tasks, the group had faith that, hey, Greg does what he says he's going to do. And it enabled me to develop a partner relationship with people. So instead of it being like a customer-client relationship or a manager-employee relationship, it was just a partnership. And it helped me work with people better. And at the end of the pilot, we asked if we can do a second one, and everyone involved said yes. And I was asked to lead it. And it was actually the second pilot where we gathered the most useful data, and we actually used it to present at ENR Future Tech. So I share this first example just to say the small things definitely matter. So I'll speak to the other tool with a second story from my career. So I came out of incubation, and I had the opportunity to accelerate a new company, which is now called DADO, then called Link. And I had to build people's confidence in my competence, because I'd never worked in a startup, and people had to trust that I could deliver on identifying and executing on a product roadmap that met customer needs. And so this is where I used that tool, act like a mini CEO, and I took charge and was very results oriented. So I ran all of our research, synthesized it, and just owned the product roadmap from the get-go. So it wasn't really a question as to whether I could do it, I just did it. And the whole time I was communicating, improving with customer quotes, survey data, as to why the roadmap was justified. And I guess the way I like to think about it is I answer the things that I'd want to prove to myself if I were the CEO. And so over time, what that meant was people stopped asking me questions as to why the roadmap was what it was, because I either answered it or they just trusted me. And so by acting like a little mini CEO, it helped me convey to the team, hey, I can drive the spaceship. So in conclusion, trust is not one thing. It's an aggregation of actions, in my experience, that indicate your character and your competence. Saying you'll send that email by 5 p.m. and sending an email by 5 p.m. creates trust. Consistently doing that creates a lot of trust. I hope you all can create more trust in your organizations, on your job sites, in your lives. I hope it was helpful. Look forward to answering any questions in the breakout rooms or after.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Greg. That was a great talk and a wonderful reminder of strategies that you can apply at every stage of your career as a young leader and then with more experience as well. So really excited to introduce our last speaker of the day before we get into our breakout sessions. And so our next speaker is going to be James Simpson. He's a project manager with Evolve MEP. And James got his start in construction in the skilled trades while he was in high school. So he became a drafter while he was in high school, then worked in the industry for the next 7 years as a BIM specialist and application developer at a trade contractor. And he now leverages that wealth of industry knowledge that he's built as a product manager at Evolve MEP, which is a technology company. So James, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, definitely. So with that introduction, I think it's only fitting we start in high school, right? And I remember actually graduating high school, and I'm sure all of you kind of felt this way. I'm sure it's shared. And I was like incredibly hopeful and excited about everything in front of me, right? But I was also like just full of anxiety, right? And like kind of overwhelmed because you have your whole life ahead of you, but you also have a whole life full of decisions to make, different possibilities, you know, either good or bad, right? And I think in a lot of ways, we all kind of continue that familiar feeling throughout life, right? Anytime we're faced with different things. And that could be either, you know, you're starting your career now, right? Or you're mid-career switching industries or, you know, even running a business, right? Especially in the construction industry where there's just rapid innovation. So I thought it was kind of fitting to kind of just share a couple pretty basic principles that I've used since then that really kind of helped me in my own career. But I think even though it's kind of bold to say, if applied really at that business level, really have the opportunity to kind of fundamentally change the industry and really propel it forward. So we'll jump right into it here. And the first one's just going to be arguably pretty simple, but also incredibly hard. And that's to embrace change, right? Once again, so simple, but just as humans, we have this instinct to resist anything that's unknown. And one of the things I've always reminded myself is anxiety and excitement actually induce the same physical feeling, right? It's the same jitters, it's the same, it's identical. And so if you really take that and dive deeper, it really means that's only in mindset, right? How you're perceiving that issue. So incredibly powerful. It's just all in how you look at it and making sure that when you see change, you see opportunity and not just the potential for something to go wrong, right? If you take that one step further, even today in business, you know, you can really use that to propel your company in kind of like this culture of action, right? We have change. What do we do about it? And the way you have to do that is simply by empowering your employees, right? The freedom to make decisions that they deem, that need to be made. And though it's somewhat of a plug, Clay Smith, our CEO, he has this great quote around, you have to empower the people closest to the problem to solve it a lot of times, right? And it's incredibly simple, but just an incredibly powerful quote because in the digital age, speed is everything, right? So being able to not only empower those people closest to the problem to solve it, because it's more than likely going to be the best course of action, but because also you're able to pretty much immediately address that change. So incredibly important all the way around. Then the second one, once again, very basic, right? But it's just to be curious. So little known fact, me as a kid, I always kind of gravitated toward mechanical things. And essentially I would take them apart, put them back together, and just more than anything, kind of tinker with them, right? And if you continue that kind of into your career, tinkering with things, breaking things, improving things, and more than anything, simply questioning it, right? Why are things the way they are? How can they be better? How do I fit into this? And is this the right way? And if you kind of do that strategically on a personal level, it'll really allow you to springboard your career, right? Because you're able to essentially get a diverse background, diverse skill set, and able to really look at anything from, different points of view. And then in the business context, you see this a ton now with things like innovation labs, right? It seems like every company that's on the stock exchange has an innovation lab now, but for good reason. Successful experimentation is what we deem as innovation, right? And that's why all of these great products you're seeing typically are now coming from the innovation lab spinoffs from these major companies, and not the company itself a lot of times. So it's incredibly powerful. And then, if you want to actually implement that at a company level, the most important thing is you remove the pressures of the day-to-day a lot of times, right? And really allow your company, your department, the individuals within it, kind of the freedom to take a step back and tinker, right? And evaluate, and not always have to be so beholden to an individual deadline, right? And really set some dedicated space, I guess, to do that. Then the last one is, actually, I wish I could take credit for it, but it's not my own. It's from a Navy SEAL I'm sure many of you have heard of. His name's Jocko Willink. And he's actually wrote a whole book around it, and I highly recommend it. But the whole principle is extreme ownership. And it's, once again, as a human tendency, myself included, we have this, this pretty insistent tendency to point at something else when something goes wrong, right? And his whole point in what he tries to lay out in his book is, you often have those other factors that are affecting, your day-to-day, but you're also only accountable for what you can do, right? And the more you focus on what you can do in those situations, the more you ultimately realize how much power you really do have in it. So incredibly powerful, once again, for that career level and individual level. But then once again, even for managers, it really sets a precedent there that if you implement that at a company-wide kind of dynamic, you start to be very intentional about analyzing what's going on, why it's happening, and what to do about it. And we do this all the time in software, right? As some of you here know, and it's retrospectives. It's taking a step back. What did we do? What went right? What went wrong? Incredibly powerful, often overlooked on the construction side. And it's mainly because we're just running in from one fire to another, right? And before you run into the fire, sometimes you have to take a step back. Do I have the right equipment? And do I have the right process to fight it, right? So once again, just 3 basic principles. But, if you apply them personally, once again, as basic as they are, they really can kind of accelerate your career. And I credit them for a lot of, the reason that I am where I am. But I think, once again, if you apply them at the industry level, I think it can really future-proof the construction industry, right? And really set us up for this rapid innovation we're all seeing. So I challenge everyone to apply it in one way or another, whatever, point you are in your career, whether you're individual or leading a business. And if you want to obviously hear more about it or hear how it kind of got me to where I am, definitely join my breakout.
Awesome. Thanks, James. Love the challenge to question and try new things too, while taking ownership. It's great. So big thanks to James, Greg, Danielle, Peyton, and Lauren for your TED Talk keynotes.